I remember that time when I would spend a lot of time alone contemplating the nature of reality. And that was quite a turbulent time because there were these episodes of what Ramesh Balsekar called flip flops. So, when I was in a good mood, I would feel that everything is one, all there is all complete integration, and I would feel the love. But then there were moments where the mind was troubled, and it would feel as if this whole world is a horrible place. But slowly, the mind started awakening to a new reality. Slowly, the awareness started seizing the mind. And at some point, and I did not even get to know when, but at some point, the seeking stopped. All contemplations stopped. And it was like this clarity that there is nothing to seek, there is nothing to find, and what you seek, the happiness that you seek, is your very nature. Nothing on the outside can help you tap that happiness. When I say outside, I mean even your thoughts. Because even a thought is something external to you, it is not you. And in that understanding, the mind ceased completely. And there was this working mind, the daily functioning mind, which would operate routinely, like getting up in the morning, having a bath, going for work, and doing all the chores and this and that. But the thinking mind that wants to manipulate a situation to achieve a particular outcome that is a projection in future, that completely stopped. And what happened was that life became spontaneous. The living became moment to moment. And this spontaneous living brings peace of mind in daily living. It is not that the life became easy or comfortable in any way. It's just that there was acceptance of life, acceptance of the flow of life, and there was no resistance to try to change anything. So, Ramana Maharshi said that the true understanding comes when one transcends the idea of worshipping God in a subject object relationship. Because the subject object relationship maintains the duality. The subject, which is the sense of personal existence or me, tries by putting effort to attain the object, which is the consciousness, God, or Brahman. Call it whatever you want. But till this subject object relationship is there, the separation is continuously maintained. And this separation itself becomes the suffering. What that means is that the seeking itself becomes a suffering. Doing anything to achieve union with God itself becomes a suffering. It is only when the subject object relationship dissolves, one realizes the unicity behind the multiplicity. Then one already is the God. Or you can say that God is all there is. The consciousness is all there is. So by God, I do not mean a part of manifestation that is all powerful, judgmental, that creates the definition of heaven or hell. That is not the God I talk about. The God for me is the consciousness, the pure consciousness, or the source. So Ramana Maharshi said that there are two ways to achieve this union, divine union. One is the method of self-inquiry, which is fixating on the I thought. Now, what happens is that our mind has a tendency to flow in different directions. And that flow, as the thinking mind, produces suffering and separation. So, when all the energy is focused on the I thought, that is, when one stays with the I thought, the original thought, then the I thought merges back to the source. Because the I thought does not have any space to flow. It does not move in any direction. So, in other words, when there are no desires, the I thought has no place to move anywhere. So, it stays still. And in that stillness, the inner guru pulls the I thought and merges it with the source or the pure consciousness. That was the one way that Ramana Maharshi advocated. Then the second way was to surrender your sense of personal volition at the feet of God. Give all your responsibilities to God. So the individual says that all my responsibilities are now God's responsibilities. And I surrender my will to the Lord. And in that surrender comes union with the God. Because then it is recognized that there is no individual that acts. And that everything happens as per the cosmic will or the will of God. And then the conclusion eventually is that God is all there is. But do you see what is common between these two methods? These two methods eventually lead to a surrender. Surrender is the recognition. It is the recognition that there is no individual doer of any actions. Everything happens as per the will of the God. Or if you don't like the word will of the God, you can call it the play of consciousness or cosmic law. So when the consciousness plays, the consciousness does not have an agenda. The consciousness does not do anything, so as to speak, keeping a perspective in mind that what is right or what is wrong. And for me, clearly it was the path of surrender, as it has been for many masters. Even the path of self-inquiry ultimately leads to the path of surrender. And please note that this is not a this is not a personal surrender. It is not that the ego says, I surrender. That is not the case. It is simply a recognition. Now, a recognition or call it an insight, is not a happening in the domain of time. It is a truth that is timeless. So it is only through the grace of the self or the God that this understanding, this insight comes about, and it is spontaneous. And it is clear that it is clear to the ego that it cannot do anything. It is not capable of doing anything, that everything happens. And Ramesh's favorite quote was, events happen, deeds are done, consequences happen, but there is no individual doer thereof. If this one quote from Ramesh Balsekar is understood, then it seizes the thinking mind. That is the end of the thinking mind. And that's precisely what happened to me. I still remember that day. I was walking on my terrace, and this thought came abruptly that you are not the doer, and it just penetrated like a lightning bolt. It just destroyed my entire being, my entire sense of personal identification. And in that moment, it was such a revelation, and that I experienced mixed emotions. I was running like crazy. I just wanted to get hold of somebody and tell them, oh my God, I am not the doer of my actions. I am not the doer. And that was such a relief. It was like a burden had been taken off my shoulders. Because for a very long time, I was carrying these loads of responsibilities, and what I could have done, and what I should have done, and what I did not do. And this entire cycle of shame and guilt and pride and arrogance used to keep me trapped, used to keep my mind restless. And then this game of, trying to meditate for long hours to make the mind quiet, trying to do that forcefully by torturing myself. I used to meditate 3 hours in a day sometimes. And at the end, it just gave me bad knees and a backache, which I struggle to this day. But it's not just the backache is not just because of the meditation, of course. It's the entire lifestyle that I was leading before. But my point is that it was so clear to me that there was no effort. I did not have to put any effort to surrender. In fact, it was not the individual's job to surrender. It was not in my control at all. It was simply that this understanding came about, as Ramana Maharshi says, through the will of God, or the awareness, or the self, call it whatever you like. It is the self that decides to end the sense of personal identification. It is the creator of ego. It is also the destroyer of ego. And then what remains is simply the functional organism, the mind-body organism, this entity which you see right now. In your case, what you see in the mirror. And that organism, by nature, is extremely peaceful. It is a very peaceful organism and highly intelligent. The brain is highly intelligent. But you are neither. You are neither the body nor the mind. And I will read this line from the book Be As You Are. It's by David Godman. It says beautifully, Now, these are Ramana Maharishi's words. So he says, true devotion, he said, Ramana Maharshi, is to remain as one really is, in the state of being in which all ideas about relationship with God have ceased to exist. So you see, in the being, in your being, not the mind, but the being, there is no subject object relationship. Because being is the God, being is the Brahman. And peace is its true nature. And he further says, the constant awareness of God prevents the mind from identifying with other objects, and enhances the conviction that God alone exists. It also produces a reciprocal flow of power or grace from the self, which weakens the hold of I thought and destroys the vasanas, which perpetuate and reinforce its existence. Eventually, the I thought is reduced to manageable proportions, and with a little self attention, it can be made to sink temporarily into the heart. So even Ramana says that the I thought is reduced to manageable proportions. And the greatest misconception is that people think that I thought has to be killed. It is not that the I thought has to be killed. Killing the I thought will imply death of the mind body organism. And without that, without this vehicle, there cannot be any communication. So the driver of the vehicle is required. So the driver is like the I thought. The only thing is that the I thought does not expand in time and become thinking. That is the only difference. Once the surrender happens, the thinking is cut off. And then the life is simply witnessed in the light of impersonal awareness of I am. And that is how it brings end to suffering, to conflict, to confusion. Because now there is no subject. That is, there is no filtered perception trying to see things a certain way. The things are precisely seen for the way they are. And things are accepted completely. Even if they produce discomfort, even that is accepted. So if a war happens between two nations, I recognize that it is the will of God that the war is happening. I recognize it. I also recognize that I am not okay with that. It does not mean that I say that I am okay with the war. I completely recognize that war kills people, it destroys homes, it destroys properties. I recognize that because of greed, because of human greed and for power and dominance and authority, these things happen. And that I am not okay with it. But at the same time, I recognize that whatever happens, happens because of the will of God. So for me, Personally, it was the path of surrender. And it happened much before I knew anything about Advaita teaching and Ramana Maharshi. And later on, when I heard Ramesh Balsekar, then the entire structure of what was happening, it started making sense. And after that, even teachings of Jiddu Krishnamurti, like I would say that Jiddu Krishnamurti was my first master. After that, even his teachings started resonating with me. So you see, this after surrender, this I thought has tasted the bliss of unconditional love. It has tasted, it has got the glimpse of the source, of the pure awareness. And then when it comes out again in the phenomenal world, there is an extremely, there is a completely different quality to it. It is not the same anymore. Because once you have seen the being, your sense of personal identification is already become an illusion. It is already recognized as an illusion. So when you see your being, you even see the being in others. And then there are no others. There is neither me nor the others.